I'm Manuel Thompson, a retired construction foreman of 67 years. Tonight was supposed to be special, celebrating my daughter Sarah's promotion with her husband James at Bellamy's, the fanciest restaurant in town. I spent 3 months saving for this dinner. When Sarah and James left early, I stayed to savor my dessert. That's when the young waiter approached, his face pale with worry. "Sir," he whispered, leaning close, "be careful. Don't drink your juice. I saw your son-in-law put something in it." Before continuing, where are you watching from today? Drop a like if you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right. Life had been quieter since my Catherine passed from cancer 8 years ago. Our modest home in Oak Ridge felt too big, too empty, without her laughter filling the rooms. But I still had Sarah, our only child, who became my rock through those dark days of grief. She'd drive over every Sunday without fail, bringing groceries and staying for dinner. Sometimes she'd even spend the night in her old bedroom, claiming she missed the comfort of home, though I suspected she was more worried about me being alone. Sarah had always been brilliant. Even as a little girl, she'd spend hours with her chemistry sets while other kids were playing with dolls. Catherine and I weren't surprised when she graduated top of her class and went on to earn her PhD in pharmaceutical research. We couldn't have been prouder when she landed a position at Neurochem, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the country. Her work on specialized drug delivery systems was groundbreaking, according to her colleagues, though she'd always downplay her achievements with genuine modesty. "It's just chemistry, Dad," she'd say with that smile that reminded me so much of her mother. 2 years ago, Sarah attended a pharmaceutical conference in Boston. That's where she met James Wilson. She called me the very next day, unusually excited about a man she'd just met. "He's different, Dad," she gushed over the phone. "So intelligent and charming. He works in financial management for medical investments. You should hear how he talks about making research funding more accessible for important projects." James was 37, 5 years older than Sarah, with perfectly styled dark hair and the kind of polished appearance that comes from expensive tailoring and regular gym visits. When Sarah first brought him home, I noticed how he surveyed our modest living room with a quick, assessing glance before his face settled into a practiced smile. "It's wonderful to finally meet you, sir," he said, extending his hand with confidence. "Sarah speaks so highly of you." Something about his handshake felt too firm, too controlling. His credentials were impeccable. MBA from Wharton, senior position at a prestigious financial firm, an apartment in the exclusive Westview Tower. He seemed perfect, too perfect, like a character from a movie rather than a real person with flaws and quirks. Their relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, James proposed with a diamond ring that must have cost more than my yearly pension. The wedding was small but elegant, nothing like the big celebration Catherine and I had always imagined for our daughter. James had insisted on efficiency over sentiment, overruling many of Sarah's preferences with gentle but firm logic. "Sweetheart, why spend on temporary flowers when we could put that money toward our future?" he'd said when Sarah mentioned wanting her mother's favorite lilies. I tried to express my concerns to Sarah the night before her wedding. "Don't you think things are moving awfully fast, honey? You've only known each other half a year." Sarah had patted my hand like I was the child. "Dad, when you know, you know. James understands me. He supports my career, and we want the same things." After they married, I noticed subtle changes in my daughter. Our Sunday dinners became less frequent, then reduced to monthly visits. When they did come, Sarah would check her phone constantly, as if awaiting instructions. James would often answer questions directed at Sarah, his arm casually but firmly around her shoulders. "Sarah's been so busy with her latest project," he'd explain smoothly. "I barely see her myself these days." I noticed how he monitored her spending, questioning small purchases she made. Her once vibrant wardrobe gradually transformed into the neutral tones he preferred. When I called her cell phone, James would often answer, explaining that Sarah was in the shower, sleeping, or too busy to talk. "I'll have her call you back, Manuel," he'd promise, but those return calls rarely came. 3 weeks ago, Sarah finally visited alone. James was on a business trip, and I saw glimpses of my old Sarah again. Over coffee, she shared exciting news. "Dad, I've been promoted to lead researcher. The company wants me to transfer to their Seattle facility to head a new project." Her eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm. "James has been so supportive. He's already lined up interviews with financial firms there. We'll be moving next week." My heart sank at the thought of Sarah moving across the country, but I forced a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. James suggested we have a special dinner before we leave," she continued. "He specifically mentioned Bellamy's. He knows how much you love that place." I didn't have the heart to tell her I'd never been to Bellamy's in my life. It was far too expensive for a retired construction foreman, but I nodded anyway, determined to give my daughter a proper send-off, even if it meant dipping into my savings. "That sounds perfect," I said, already calculating how to make the numbers work. "One last celebration before your big adventure." Little did I know that dinner would change everything. I arrived at Bellamy's 30 minutes early, feeling distinctly out of place. The restaurant occupied the top floor of what used to be the old bank building, now converted into the fanciest establishment in our modest town. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting warm light over tables covered in pristine white tablecloths. The maitre d' glanced at my worn but carefully polished shoes before checking the reservation. "Thompson, party of 3, I said, standing a bit straighter. "Ah, yes, Mr. Thompson. Your table is ready. Please follow me." He led me to a table by the windows, offering a sweeping view of the city lights below. I checked my wallet for the 3rd time that evening, feeling the weight of the 3 months of careful saving it had taken to afford this dinner. $250 set aside from my pension each month, skipping my morning coffee at Baker's Cafe, fixing the garbage disposal myself instead of calling a plumber, all to make this night special for Sarah. A young waiter with the name tag Thomas brought water and asked if I'd like anything while waiting. I requested just water, saving room in both my stomach and budget for the meal ahead. Sarah and James arrived 20 minutes late. My daughter looked stunning in a navy blue dress I'd never seen before, though I noticed she seemed paler than usual, with the slightest shadows under her eyes. "Traffic was abysmal," James announced without apologizing, adjusting his tie as he took his seat. "The road construction on Maple Avenue is a disaster. I told the city council last year that their infrastructure planning was inadequate." I rose to hug Sarah, noticing how she leaned into the embrace a moment longer than usual. "You look beautiful, honey," I whispered. "Sorry we're late, Dad," she said softly. James ordered appetizers for the table without consulting either of us. Expensive selections of oysters, foie gras, and something with truffles whose name I couldn't pronounce. He also took charge of the wine, selecting a bottle that I later glimpsed on the menu at $120. Sarah's favorite, he claimed, though I'd never known my daughter to be particularly interested in wine. Throughout the appetizers, James dominated the conversation, speaking about the opportunities awaiting them in Seattle, the exclusive neighborhood they'd be living in, the connections he already had in the city. Sarah nodded along, contributing little beyond agreement. When Sarah excused herself to the restroom, James's demeanor shifted subtly. His smile remained, but the warmth vanished from his eyes as he leaned forward. "Manuel, I want you to know that I'll be taking good care of Sarah from now on," he said, his voice carrying an undercurrent I couldn't quite identify. "She won't need to worry about coming back to visit so often. The distance will be good for her career focus. She's always welcome home," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "And I'd love to visit Seattle sometime." James's smile tightened. "Perhaps in a year or so. We'll need time to settle in properly, establish boundaries in our new life." Before I could respond, he checked his watch and phone for the 3rd time since arriving. This pattern continued throughout the main course, James constantly monitoring the time, keeping one eye on the door, steering conversation away from specific details about their move. Sarah returned, and I noticed her movements seemed slightly uncoordinated as she took her seat. "Are you feeling all right, honey?" I asked. "Just tired from all the packing," she responded, her words careful and measured. As dinner progressed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Sarah barely touched her sea base, and her participation in conversation grew increasingly minimal. James kept refreshing her wine glass while barely touching his own. I had secretly arranged with the restaurant to serve Sarah's favorite dessert chocolate soufflé with raspberry coulis, just like her mother used to make for special occasions. When the waiter approached to take our dessert orders, I started to mention my surprise, but James abruptly cut me off. "No dessert for us," he announced firmly. "We need to get going." He looked at his watch again. "Our flight is early tomorrow, and Sarah still has some packing to finish." Sarah looked momentarily confused. "Flight? I thought we were driving the first leg tomorrow." James's hand found her arm, squeezing gently. "Remember, sweetheart? We changed plans yesterday. The shipping company needed an extra day for the furniture." "Oh," Sarah said, her brow furrowing before smoothing out again. "Of course, I could drive you both home," I offered, concerned by Sarah's disoriented state. "Absolutely not necessary," James replied with firm finality. "We're perfectly fine, just tired from all the moving preparations." They stood to leave, and I noticed Sarah swayed slightly, requiring James's steadying hand on her lower back. His grip looked firmer than necessary, his fingers digging into the fabric of her dress. Something flashed in Sarah's eyes, confusion, perhaps fear, before it disappeared behind a vacant smile. "Bye, Dad," she said, her voice oddly flat. "Thank you for dinner. I'll take care of the check," James added. "My treat." "No need," I insisted. "This was my gift to you both." As they walked away, I watched James guiding Sarah through the restaurant with unusual firmness, his hand never leaving her back, steering her movements. At the door, she looked back once, a brief glance that sent a chill through me. Then they were gone. I returned to my table alone. The celebratory mood evaporated. The waiter arrived with Sarah's surprise chocolate soufflé anyway, placing it before me with an apologetic smile. "The kitchen had already prepared it, sir. Would you still like it?" I nodded, though my appetite had vanished. As I picked at the dessert, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The chocolate soufflé sat mostly untouched before me, its delicate structure already collapsing in on itself. I couldn't stop replaying the evening in my mind. Sarah's unusual passivity, James's controlling behavior, the strange inconsistency about their travel plans. Something felt deeply wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. I was about to request the check when the young waiter Thomas, according to his name tag, approached my table again. His earlier professional demeanor had been replaced by obvious nervousness. He glanced over his shoulder before leaning down close to me. "Sir," he whispered urgently, "be careful. Don't drink your juice. I saw your son-in-law put something in it when you were looking at the dessert menu." My blood ran cold. "What?" Thomas's voice dropped even lower. "I shouldn't be telling you this. I could lose my job for interfering with customers, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't say something." His eyes darted around the restaurant again. "He did the same thing to your daughter's wine when she went to the bathroom. I saw him take out a small packet from his jacket and pour powder into her glass." My hands began to shake. "Are you certain?" Thomas nodded grimly. "I've worked in restaurants for 6 years through college. I've seen people try to drug drinks before. Usually it's guys targeting their dates, not." He trailed off, his implication clear. I stared at my untouched cranberry juice, the special treat I'd ordered instead of alcohol since I was driving. "He tried to put something in your juice when you were distracted by the waiter bringing the neighboring table their dessert," Thomas continued. "I don't think he got much in before you turned back, but still I wouldn't drink it." My mind raced to Sarah's symptoms, the disorientation, the unusual passivity, the physical unsteadiness. Everything suddenly made terrible sense. "Do you have any way to prove this?" I asked, desperately wanting to believe this was all a misunderstanding. Thomas hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "I probably shouldn't have done this, but after I saw him with your daughter's drink, I started recording on my phone in my apron pocket when I served your table." He showed me a partially obscured video where James's hand could be seen moving over my juice glass while my attention was clearly directed elsewhere. I was going to tell my manager, but Mr. Wilson is a regular here with business clients. He spends thousands every month. They wouldn't believe me over him without clear evidence. A horrible thought struck me. I dipped my finger into my juice and placed a drop on the leaf of the small decorative plant on our table. Within minutes, the leaf had begun to visibly wilt. "Oh my God," I whispered. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times with the same result. "I need to call the police," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Thomas nodded. "My shift ends in 10 minutes. I'll stay with you. I can show them the video." As I dialed 911, fragments of concerning memories surfaced. James accidentally breaking Sarah's phone twice in the past year. Sarah mentioning offhandedly that James had convinced her to update her will after they married. The way her research colleagues had stopped calling the house after James told them Sarah preferred email contact. The gradual isolation had happened so subtly, I hadn't recognized the pattern until this moment. 911. "What's your emergency?" The dispatcher answered. "I need to report a potential poisoning," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "My son-in-law put something in my drink and my daughter's drink at Bellamy's restaurant. My daughter left with him 15 minutes ago, and she was showing signs of being drugged." There was a brief pause. "Sir, are you certain about this accusation? Do you have any evidence? The waiter saw him do it and has video. And my daughter was clearly disoriented when she left. They claimed to be catching a flight tomorrow, but she seemed surprised by this. Something is very wrong." The dispatcher's tone grew more serious. "What's your daughter's name and description, and your location?" As I provided Sarah's details, Thomas showed me something else on his phone, a clear image of James handling Sarah's drink while she was away from the table, his body positioned to block the view from other diners. "Can you send that to the police?" I asked him. Thomas nodded. "Already texted it to my manager too. He's pulling the security footage now." The dispatcher assured me officers would arrive within minutes and advised me to stay at the restaurant. As I ended the call, a terrible realization washed over me. James might have been planning this for months. The sudden job opportunity in Seattle, the rushed goodbye dinner, the early departure, it all felt orchestrated now. I remembered a news story from last year about a businessman who had disappeared with his wife's life insurance money after she died under suspicious circumstances during a vacation. The police had speculated he'd been planning it for over a year. Could James be doing something similar? Sarah's new position would certainly come with increased salary and benefits. Thomas returned with his manager, a stern-looking woman in her 50s who had initially seemed suspicious of the accusations, but changed her demeanor completely after viewing the security footage. The restaurant's cameras captured clear images of Mr. Wilson tampering with both drinks. She confirmed grimly, "The police are on their way, and we're preserving all evidence for them." The minutes waiting for the police felt like hours, each second ticking away with Sarah potentially in danger. I tried calling her repeatedly, each unanswered ring increasing my panic. "Do you know where they live?" Thomas asked. "Westview Tower, apartment 1220, I replied automatically. "But if he's drugged her, he might not take her home. He mentioned a flight tomorrow." Thomas's expression darkened. If he's planning to take her out of the country, he didn't need to finish the thought. We both understood the implications. 2 police officers arrived within 10 minutes, introducing themselves as Officers Rivera and Dalton. They took my statement with professional efficiency, then interviewed Thomas and reviewed the video evidence. What had started as a seemingly minor incident quickly escalated when Officer Rivera called in to request a test kit for the drinks. "Sir, we're taking this very seriously," Officer Dalton assured me while his partner made additional calls. "We've put out an alert for your daughter and son-in-law's vehicle. Can you describe it?" "A black Tesla Model S," I said, remembering how James had boasted about its autopilot features. "License plate EXL239. The restaurant manager approached with a plastic bag containing my juice glass, carefully preserved for evidence. When the test kit arrived, Officer Rivera performed the analysis on the spot, his expression growing grim as the liquid changed color. "Benzodiazepines," he confirmed, naming a class of sedatives. "High concentration too." Their radio crackled, and Officer Rivera stepped away to respond. When he returned, his expression had changed entirely. "Mr. Thompson, we need to discuss some concerning information about your son-in-law," he said carefully. "Our database search on James Wilson has raised several red flags. There's a possibility he's not who he claims to be." My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Officer Dalton took over. A man matching his description and operational pattern is wanted for questioning in Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon under different names. The most recent identity we believe may be connected to your son-in-law is Jonathan Wells, a financial advisor who married a biotech executive in Phoenix last year. She disappeared during a business trip to Mexico 3 months later. Her accounts were emptied the day before she vanished. The room seemed to tilt around me. Are you saying James is actually this Jonathan person that he married my daughter to? We can't confirm identity yet, Officer Rivera interjected. But the pattern is concerning enough that we're treating this as a high-priority situation. A detective is on the way, and we've contacted the FBI due to the potential interstate nature of the crimes. More officers arrived, along with a detective who introduced himself as Detective Harmon, a serious man with graying hair and tired eyes that nonetheless missed nothing. He asked pointed questions about Sarah's career, finances, and James's behavior patterns. Your daughter works in pharmaceutical research, correct? He asked. What exactly is her specialty? Drug delivery systems, I replied. She developed some new method for targeting specific cells. It's very valuable from what she's told me, though I don't understand the science. Detective Harmon exchanged looks with his colleagues. There's an increasing pattern of corporate espionage targeting pharmaceutical researchers. Their access credentials and research can be worth millions on the black market. Thomas, who had stayed well past the end of his shift, spoke up. I overheard them talking during appetizers. Mr. Wilson mentioned something about not needing to work after next week when they were discussing Seattle. Mrs. Wilson looked confused and asked what he meant, but he changed the subject. Detective Harmon made notes, then pulled me aside. Mr. Thompson, I need to ask a difficult question. Has your daughter displayed any signs of being controlled or abused by her husband? Changes in behavior, isolation from friends or family, unexplained injuries? My guilt crashed over me like a wave. All the signs had been there. Sarah's increasing isolation, her diminished confidence, the way she checked with James before making any decision. I'd noticed, but hadn't recognized the pattern for what it was. Yes, I admitted, my voice breaking. But I didn't realize. I thought she was just busy with work and marriage. I should have done something sooner. This isn't your fault, Detective Harmon said firmly. These individuals are extremely manipulative and skilled at hiding their true nature. The investigation accelerated rapidly. Within 30 minutes, the restaurant had become a command center of sorts, with additional officers arriving and computer equipment being set up. One officer was dedicated to trying to ping Sarah's phone location, while another ran financial searches. We've got activity on their joint accounts, announced one officer. Multiple withdrawals totaling $60,000 this morning from ATMs across town. Another officer called out from his laptop. Credit card hit at Airways Travel Agency at 2 p.m. today. 2 one-way tickets to Istanbul, Turkey, departing at 11:30 tonight from Hartford International. Detective Harmon immediately issued orders to have officers stationed at the airport and to alert border security. My heart raced at the implications James was planning to take Sarah out of the country tonight, not tomorrow. We've got a location ping, called another officer. Mrs. Wilson's phone just briefly connected to a tower near their apartment building before going offline again. Detective Harmon turned to me. We're preparing to enter their apartment. I have to ask you to stay here where it's safe, Mr. Thompson. No, I said firmly, standing up. That's my daughter. I'm coming with you. He started to object, but something in my expression must have conveyed my determination. After a moment, he nodded reluctantly. You'll stay in the vehicle until we secure the scene, he said, making it clear this wasn't negotiable. If he's there with your daughter, the situation could be volatile. Thomas stepped forward, unexpectedly. I can identify him with complete certainty. He's been coming to the restaurant for months. I know his face, his voice, his mannerisms. Detective Harmon considered this, then nodded. Come with us, then. We might need a positive ID if we find him. As we prepared to leave, I felt a strange mix of terror and determination. My Sarah was in danger from the man who had promised to love and protect her. The thought of what might be happening to her right now was unbearable. But giving in to that fear wouldn't help her. I needed to stay focused. "We'll find her," Thomas said quietly as we followed the officers out, seeming to read my thoughts. "We have to." The drive to Westview Tower felt agonizingly slow despite the police cruiser's speed. Detective Harmon drove while Officer Rivera coordinated with other units via radio. I sat in the back with Thomas, both of us tense and silent as the city lights flashed by. My mind tortured me with images of Sarah drugged and helpless, at the mercy of a man who had apparently made a career of exploiting and harming women. Westview Tower loomed ahead, its 30 stories of glass and steel glittering against the night sky. The luxury apartment building had always intimidated me during my few visits. Its marble lobby, uniformed doormen, and private elevators all served as reminders of the gulf between my simple life and the world James had created for my daughter. "We have officers covering all exits," Detective Harmon informed us as we pulled up. "The building security is cooperating fully." The head of security met us in the private garage, providing key cards for the elevators and apartment. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson's unit is 1220, he confirmed. "Our cameras show Mrs. Wilson entering with Mr. Wilson approximately 45 minutes ago. He was supporting her weight considerably. No one has exited since." A tactical team had already assembled, their bulletproof vests and service weapons a stark contrast to the luxury surroundings. Detective Harmon gave final instructions before they moved toward the dedicated elevator. "Remember, we have reason to believe Mrs. Wilson is under the influence of sedatives and may be in physical danger. Approach with caution, but her safety is our primary concern." Thomas and I remained in the lobby with an officer while the team ascended. The minutes crawled by, each one stretching my nerves thinner. Finally, the radio crackled. "Apartment is clear. No occupants present. Signs of hasty packing and departure. Request CSI team for processing." My heart sank at the news. We'd missed them. But where would James take her now? Detective Harmon's voice came through again. "Mr. Thompson should come up. There's something he needs to see." The officer escorted us to the 12th floor, where the apartment door stood open. Inside was a scene of controlled chaos, drawers pulled open, closets emptied, papers scattered. Despite the disarray, the luxury of the apartment was evident in its high-end furnishings and expansive views of the city. Detective Harmon met us at the door. "Mr. Thompson, we need your help identifying what might be missing. Anything that seems out of place or significant." I moved through the apartment in a daze, noting Sarah's possessions mixed with unfamiliar items that must have been James's contributions to their shared life. In the master bedroom, designer luggage was missing from the rack, but various pieces of Sarah's clothing still hung in the closet. "He didn't take many of her clothes," I noted. "Just a small selection, suggesting they won't be gone long, or he plans to get rid of her belongings," Detective Harmon said grimly. On the dresser, I spotted something that made my breath catch: a silver locket I had given Sarah on her 16th birthday, containing a tiny photo of her mother. Sarah had treasured it, wearing it every day since Catherine's death. Finding it discarded here felt wrong in a way that pierced my heart. "She would never willingly leave this behind," I said, my voice breaking as I picked up the necklace. "Never." Detective Harmon nodded, understanding the significance. "That's important information, Mr. Thompson. It confirms she's not acting of her own free will." In the home office, officers were examining the computer and files. One called Detective Harmon over to show him financial documents they'd discovered hidden in a false bottom drawer. "He's been systematically transferring funds from their joint accounts to offshore holdings," the detective explained, showing me statements that meant little to my untrained eye but clearly troubled him. "Small amounts over time, to avoid triggering bank alerts." Another officer appeared from the second bedroom that Sarah had converted to a home workspace. "Sir, we found something concerning. Mrs. Wilson's research materials appear to have been accessed. Several notebooks are missing, along with what looks like access cards to her laboratory." This revelation shifted the investigation's tone immediately. Detective Harmon stepped away to make urgent phone calls while officers continued processing the scene. I stood in the center of my daughter's violated home, feeling helpless until a crucial memory surfaced. "Detective," I called out. "Sarah has a second phone, a backup she keeps for emergencies. Catherine and I started the habit after Sarah got lost on a hiking trip in college. We've always maintained the practice. Detective Harmon returned instantly. Do you know the number? Is it registered in her name? It's registered in my name, I replied. We kept it that way for privacy. I recited the number from memory, watching as an officer immediately began the process of tracing it. If he doesn't know about this phone and she has it with her. Detective Harmon left the implication hanging. Within minutes, the officer tracking the phone looked up with renewed urgency. Got a signal. It's active and pinging from the Windward Motel, about 20 minutes from the airport. The energy in the room transformed instantly. Detective Harmon issued rapid orders, organizing teams and coordinating with units already near the location. Thomas, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. I can confirm exactly what Wilson was wearing tonight. Navy suit, light blue shirt, no tie. He was carrying a brown leather messenger bag when they left the restaurant. Good, Detective Harmon nodded. That helps. As preparations were made to move out, I approached the detective. I'm coming with you. Mr. Thompson, this could be dangerous. These situations can escalate quickly. She's my daughter, I said simply. I'll stay back, follow every instruction, but I need to be there. After a moment of consideration, he nodded. You'll remain in the vehicle with an officer at all times. At the first sign of trouble, you follow their orders without question. Understood? Completely. As we headed to the motel, I clutched Sarah's locket in my palm. Its familiar weight, a connection to her. Thomas sat beside me again, his young face set with determination. Your daughter is lucky to have you, he said quietly. Many people wouldn't have noticed something was wrong. I couldn't accept the comfort. I should have seen it sooner. All the signs were there. People like Wilson are experts at manipulation, he replied. My sister was in an abusive relationship for years before anyone knew. These predators isolate their victims so gradually that it's hard to see the pattern until it's too late. The officer in the front seat interrupted. We're getting updates from the motel surveillance. A couple matching their description checked in approximately 1 hour ago. The man was supporting a woman who appeared intoxicated. Room 24, ground floor, north side. Detective Harmon's voice came through on the radio. All units maintain position until tactical team is in place. Do not approach until my signal. Repeat, do not approach. As we neared the motel, my phone vibrated with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Help drugged airport 11:30, Sarah. My hands shook as I showed it to the officer. She's fighting, he said, immediately relaying this information. This is good. She's conscious enough to reach out. We parked a block from the motel, keeping clear of the operation but close enough to respond if needed. Through the windshield, I could see the Windward Motel, a single-story budget establishment with direct door access to each room from the parking lot. Police vehicles were positioned discreetly around the perimeter. Lights off to avoid alerting the suspect. The radio crackled with updates as officers took positions. Sarah's location was confirmed by another ping from her emergency phone. The tactical team was ready. Everything hinged on the next few minutes. I closed my eyes briefly, sending up a silent prayer for my daughter's safety. When I opened them again, I saw movement at room 24, the door opening. A familiar figure emerging. That's him, Thomas whispered urgently. That's Wilson. James emerged from room 24, glancing furtively around the parking lot before returning inside. Moments later, he reappeared with Sarah, his arm firmly around her waist. Even from a distance, I could see she was struggling to walk, her movements uncoordinated and sluggish. She wore the same navy dress from dinner, but her hair was disheveled, and she seemed unable to support her own weight. The officer in our car spoke urgently into his radio. Suspects emerging. Female appears heavily sedated but conscious. Detective Harmon's voice responded. All units hold position. Wait for them to clear the doorway. James was guiding Sarah toward a rental car parked directly in front of their room. He had changed from his dinner clothes into casual wear jeans and a dark jacket and carried a leather duffel bag over his shoulder. Sarah stumbled, nearly falling, and he grabbed her roughly to keep her upright. Something in me snapped at seeing him handle my daughter so callously. Before I could think, I was out of the police car, ignoring the officer's shout to stop. I moved on instinct, driven by a father's desperate need to protect his child. Police operation in progress. Detective Harmon's voice boomed through a megaphone as officers emerged from their positions. James Wilson, freeze and put your hands up. James's head whipped around, eyes widening in shock before narrowing with calculation. In one swift motion, he pulled Sarah against him, using her as a shield while reaching into his jacket. "Stay back," he shouted. "I have a gun." The police held their positions, weapons trained but unable to risk hitting Sarah. James began backing toward the car, dragging my stumbling daughter with him. I was still moving forward, now visible to both James and Sarah. When Sarah's unfocused eyes found mine, recognition flickered across her face. "Dad?" she called weakly, her voice slurred but unmistakable. "It's okay, Sarah," I called back, ignoring the officer's signals to retreat. "Everything's gonna be okay." James's face contorted with rage. "Manuel, how did you?" "The waiter," he snarled, realization dawning. "You should have minded your own business, old man." "Let her go, James," I said, trying to keep my voice steady while continuing to inch closer. "It's over. The police know everything. The drugging, the money transfers, your real identity. There's nowhere to go." Sarah's eyes widened at my words, confusion and fear washing over her face as she struggled to comprehend what was happening through the haze of sedatives. "James," she mumbled. "What's he talking about?" James tightened his grip on her. "Shut up." "He's confused. Senile. We need to go now." Detective Harmon was using my distraction to position officers in a wider perimeter, while tactical team members moved into flanking positions. I kept talking, keeping James's attention focused on me. "Your real name is Jonathan Wells, isn't it? You did this before in Arizona and Nevada. How many women have there been, James?" Sarah's struggling became more determined, despite her drugged state. "Let me go," she slurred, trying to pull away from him. I said, "Shut up," James hissed, his composure cracking as he fumbled with the car keys while maintaining his grip on Sarah. I was close enough now to see the wild desperation in his eyes, the look of a cornered animal. It was the most dangerous moment, when a predator feels trapped and becomes unpredictable. "Let her go and surrender peacefully," Detective Harmon called out. "Don't make this worse for yourself." James laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Worse? You think this can get worse? I'm not going back to prison, ever." In his moment of distraction, Sarah made a clumsy but determined effort to break free, stomping hard on his foot. James cursed, his grip loosening just enough for Sarah to pull partially away, creating separation between them. It was the opening the tactical team had been waiting for. "Now," Detective Harmon commanded. Everything happened with disorienting speed. Officers converged from multiple directions. James shouted and reached again into his jacket. I lunged forward toward Sarah, driven by pure protective instinct. There was a sharp sound that my mind didn't immediately register as a gunshot. Then Sarah was falling, and I was catching her, cradling her away from danger. The tactical team took James down with practiced efficiency. He fought wildly, screaming threats and obscenities as they secured him. I focused entirely on Sarah, supporting her weight as she collapsed against me. "Dad," she murmured, her pupils dilated from the drugs. "What's happening? I don't feel right." "It's okay, sweetheart," I soothed, lowering her gently to sit on the curb while keeping her upright. "Help is coming. You're safe now." Paramedics rushed forward, taking over Sarah's care with calm professionalism. They checked her vital signs and started an IV while asking me questions about what drugs she might have ingested. I repeated what the officers had found in my juice at the restaurant. "Her heart rate is elevated but stable," one paramedic reported. "Pupils dilated, speech slurred, consistent with benzodiazepine ingestion. We need to get her to the hospital for monitoring and possible administration of a reversal agent." They loaded Sarah onto a stretcher, and I insisted on riding in the ambulance with her. As we prepared to leave, Thomas approached, relief evident on his young face. "They got him," he said simply. He had a gun and her passport, plus 3 more passports with different names but his photo. They found her research materials in his bag too. I grasped his hand. "Thank you for everything. You saved her life." "I just did what anyone should do," he replied, embarrassed by the praise. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and medical terminology as the paramedics monitored Sarah closely. She drifted in and out of awareness, sometimes recognizing me, other times looking confused and frightened. I held her hand the entire journey, promising repeatedly that she was safe now. At the hospital, she was immediately taken for treatment, blood tests, and monitoring. The doctor explained that while the situation was serious, Sarah would likely recover fully given the prompt medical intervention. The blood work confirms benzodiazepines in her system, Dr. Lewis explained. At the levels we're seeing, without treatment, she could have experienced respiratory depression, especially if combined with alcohol or additional doses. You intervened at a crucial time. I sat by Sarah's bedside through the night, watching her sleep as the medications gradually worked their way out of her system. Detective Harmon visited briefly, updating me on James's arrest and the evidence they'd recovered. He had everything prepared for an extended disappearance, he explained quietly. Multiple identities, cash, cryptocurrency accounts. We found evidence linking him to 3 previous cases across different states, all following the same pattern of marrying professional women, isolating them, then disappearing with their assets. What about Sarah's research? I asked, remembering the officer's concerns at the apartment. That's where this case differs from his previous pattern, Detective Harmon replied grimly. We believe he was specifically targeting her for her access to proprietary pharmaceutical formulas. There are indications he had buyers lined up internationally. The FBI is handling that aspect of the investigation now. Sarah woke fully around dawn, the confusion of the drugs finally clearing from her system. When her eyes focused on me, they filled with tears. "Dad?" she whispered. "It wasn't a nightmare, was it? James really did." He tried to. I took her hand gently. "Yes, sweetheart. But he failed. You're safe now." She broke down then, sobs racking her body as the full reality crashed over her. I held her as she cried, my own tears mixing with hers. When she finally calmed enough to talk, the story emerged in painful fragments. "I started noticing strange things months ago," she admitted. "Missing money. Calls to my lab asking for verification of access codes I hadn't requested. But he always had explanations. I wanted so badly to believe him." She looked up at me, anguish in her eyes. "How could I have been so stupid?" "You weren't stupid," I said firmly. "He was a practiced predator who knew exactly how to manipulate and isolate his victims. The police have found evidence connecting him to similar crimes in 3 other states." "Other women?" she asked. Horrified, I nodded sadly. "You're the first one they've been able to save before." I couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah closed her eyes, processing this information. I remember feeling strange at dinner. Then everything gets fuzzy. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't make my body or mind work properly. She opened her eyes again, determination replacing some of the hurt. "I remember fighting to send that text from the phone you always made me carry. That text helped the police find you," I assured her. "You fought back even through the drugs. You're stronger than you know." A gentle knock at the door interrupted us. Thomas stood there, holding a small bouquet of flowers. "Sorry to intrude," he said hesitantly. "I just wanted to see if you were okay." Sarah looked confused, and I quickly explained who he was and how instrumental he'd been in saving her. Her eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't spoken up." Thomas shifted uncomfortably under the praise. Anyone would have done the same. "No," I said firmly. "They wouldn't. Most people would have looked the other way, afraid of getting involved or losing their job. You showed real courage." For the first time in our conversation, Sarah really looked at me, seeing beyond her own trauma to recognize mine. "You saved me too, Dad. You always knew something wasn't right about him, didn't you?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. She squeezed my hand. "I should have trusted your instincts. From now on, I will." The days immediately following Sarah's rescue were some of the most difficult of our lives. The physical effects of the drugs cleared from her system within 48 hours, but the emotional trauma ran much deeper. She alternated between periods of numb, shock, and overwhelming grief, struggling to reconcile the man she thought she had married with the predator he truly was. I keep going over every moment, every conversation, she confessed during one of our quiet talks in her hospital room, trying to see where I missed the signs. How could I have lived with someone for 2 years and not known who he really was? Because he was expertly hiding his true self, I reminded her gently. The police psychologist said these types of predators are masters of deception. They show exactly what their victims want to see. The media attention made everything harder. Despite the police department's efforts to protect Sarah's privacy, the story was too sensational to contain prominent researcher rescued from international trafficking attempt by retired father and restaurant waiter. Reporters camped outside the hospital until security had to be increased. Sarah's employer sent security specialists to ensure her safety and protect their research interests. Their support was unwavering, assuring her that her position remained secure whenever she felt ready to return. The FBI's investigation revealed James, or Jonathan, as we now knew him, had been attempting to steal proprietary formulas worth millions on the black market. When Sarah was released from the hospital 3 days after her rescue, she came to stay with me in the home where she'd grown up. Her apartment held too many painful memories and potential triggers. The first night, I found her sitting in the kitchen at 3 a.m., clutching a cup of cold tea. "I keep seeing his face," she whispered when I joined her. The way he looked at the motel when he realized he'd been caught, like a mask dropping away. "There was nothing behind his eyes, Dad. Nothing human." I took her hands in mine, noting how thin and pale she'd become. "But you survived. You're stronger than him. You always were." Thomas visited regularly, bringing meals from the restaurant where he worked and offering quiet, undemanding company. His presence seemed to comfort Sarah, perhaps because he represented the turning point in her story, the moment when someone chose to help rather than look away. They developed a friendship that provided normalcy amid the chaos of police interviews, legal proceedings, and therapy appointments. The path to recovery wasn't linear. Some days Sarah seemed almost her old self, laughing and making plans for the future. Other days, she could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by betrayal and self-doubt. I learned to follow her lead, offering support without pushing, present without hovering. "The therapist says I need to reclaim my independence," Sarah told me after her 4th counseling session. "But the thought of living alone again terrifies me." "There's no timeline for healing," I assured her. "You can stay here as long as you need." We established new routines, morning walks in the neighborhood park, cooking dinner together, watching old movies from her childhood. Simple activities that rebuilt her sense of safety and autonomy. I carefully avoided the overprotectiveness that would have been so easy to fall into, knowing she needed to rediscover her own strength. 6 weeks after the incident, James's trial began. The evidence against him was overwhelming. In addition to the attempted kidnapping and drugging of Sarah, prosecutors had connected him to the disappearance of 2 other women in different states. His offshore accounts contained funds traced back to his previous victims, and his computer revealed communications with buyers interested in Sarah's research. Sarah's testimony was a pivotal moment in both the trial and her recovery. Though visibly terrified, she faced her would-be abductor with remarkable composure, detailing his manipulation and control tactics in clear, unflinching terms. "He isolated me so gradually, I didn't notice until I was completely alone," she explained to the jury. "He would subtly criticize my friends until I stopped seeing them. He would answer my phone and make excuses for why I couldn't talk. He would check my spending and question every purchase until I stopped buying things without his approval." When the defense attorney attempted to suggest she had been complicit in the research theft, Sarah's response silenced the courtroom. "I dedicated my life to developing treatments that could save lives," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I would never, under any circumstances, betray that work or the patients it could help. He didn't just try to steal my research, he tried to steal my purpose." The trial brought closure of a sort when James was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. As other victims came forward after seeing Sarah's story in the news, additional charges were filed that ensured he would never walk free again. "It doesn't fix everything," Sarah acknowledged as we left the courthouse after sentencing. "But it helps knowing he can't do this to anyone else." Gradually, our lives began to rebuild around the new reality. Sarah started working remotely for her company, eventually accepting a modified position that allowed her to remain in town rather than relocate. The trauma had changed her career priorities, shifting her focus toward developing medications for PTSD and anxiety disorders. "I understand the need for these treatments in a way I never did before," she explained. "Maybe this experience can help others through my work." 4 months after the incident, Sarah found an apartment in a secure building near my home. The decision to move out was both frightening and necessary for her continued healing. "I need to know I can stand on my own again," she told me, "but I'm glad you'll be just 10 minutes away." Thomas remained a steady presence in our lives, his initial heroic intervention evolving into genuine friendship. He finished his college degree in psychology that spring, his experience with Sarah's case influencing his decision to focus on trauma recovery. The three of us formed an unusual but strong support system, bound by the intense experience we'd shared. For my part, I found purpose in supporting other families affected by similar crimes. Detective Harmon connected me with a victim advocacy group where I could share our story and help others recognize the warning signs of coercive control. I learned that my construction background gave me a unique perspective on rebuilding not just structures, but lives. "You understand the importance of a solid foundation before adding walls and a roof," the group coordinator observed. "That's exactly what these families need to hear." 1 year after that fateful dinner at Bellamy's, Sarah, Thomas, and I returned to the restaurant. It was Sarah's idea, a symbolic reclaiming of a place that represented both trauma and salvation. "I want to make new memories here," she explained. "Better ones." We were seated at a different table, but the significance of the location wasn't lost on any of us. Sarah looked around the elegant space, then raised her water glass in a toast. "To speaking up when something feels wrong," she said, nodding to Thomas. "To trusting your instincts," she added, smiling at me. "And to rebuilding, stronger than before," she concluded, lifting her chin with the quiet confidence that had gradually returned. As we clinked glasses, I reflected on how differently things could have ended without the chain of small, crucial decisions: Thomas choosing to speak up despite the risk to his job, my decision to listen to my concerns rather than dismiss them, Sarah fighting through the drug haze to send that critical text. Each action a thread in the safety net that caught her. Life remains unpredictable. Sarah still struggles with trust issues and occasional nightmares. I still fight the urge to call her multiple times a day to check on her. But we've learned to balance vigilance with living, to be cautious without being controlled by fear. If there's one lesson I hope others take from our story, it's this: trust your instincts when something feels wrong, and don't be afraid to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. You never know when those actions might save a life. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something wasn't right about a situation or person? Did you listen to it or ignore it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If our experiences touched you or helped you recognize warning signs in your own life, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And if you're interested in more real-life stories of survival and healing, subscribe to this channel for weekly uploads. Thank you for listening to our journey. And remember, sometimes the most important words you can say are "something doesn't feel right here." Stay safe, trust your instincts, and take care of each other.